you just clicked on a video that's going to help you decide on what standard or topic or objective that you'll want to do for your standards-based lesson plan, and then also how to make it measurable. So you clicked on this link right here, and the way we do that is we're going to have to scroll down to the instructor's resources, and we have to look at two handouts. One is called Backwards Design's 40-40-40 Rule and Bloom's Taxonomy. So let's click on Backwards Design 40-40-40 Rule first. And anytime that you're going to decide what to teach, you have to sort of really focus and narrow down all the different topics that you can possibly have. And we do this in a way called backwards design, because usually a lot of instructors always try to find the instructional activities first and then why they're doing it second. In backwards design, we start with the objective first because it forces you to consider why you're doing the lesson throughout the whole decision-making process and the development of your lesson plan. So we want to ask ourselves, what do we really want our case studies to know, understand, and be able to do? Now, if you're a DOE teacher, or you want to be a DOE teacher, this has already been done for you through Hiccups 3 website, which you're probably familiar with, and it lists all the benchmarks that students in the DOE need to know. However, even if with that sort of choice done for us, we want to apply something called the 40-40 rule to help us really focus on what is important to teach. So usually I'll have folks write down everything that they want or think is important for their students to know, and then I'll narrow that list down by having them cut it in half, and then I'll ask them to choose one thing. And the thinking behind that is that when we have everything that we want to know, we think of what they might want to know for the length of our class or that unit, where they would remember it for 40 days and then they would forget about it. Then when we cut that list in half, we're really asking, these are important to know for about the length of the school year, or I'm sorry, their schooling, and then after that they forget it. Or we want students to know stuff for 40 years, and that you would be teaching it for 40 years because it's such a big idea and has enduring understanding. So most of the stuff that we teach is usually in the 40-day variety, where they learn it, forget about it. So we want to narrow down what you want to teach in this center called a big idea. And once you do that, then you'll need to turn it into an actual measurable objective. Because unfortunately, most of the time when we have something we want to teach, it's not measurable. For example, we might use the word understanding as part of our big idea, and it turns out that understanding only takes place in the mind. When you turn it into something observable of what understanding could be, then when you can then actually measure that actual learning. So for example, Bloom's taxonomy takes different levels of understanding and gives them specific words that go with that level of understanding, and the lowest level is called knowledge. So if I ask a student to recognize, list, they're basically recalling some information, but I don't really know if they really understand that information. So then as I get more and more in depth, where they may have to explain that knowledge, then I get a little more information about it. If I ask them to apply that knowledge, I'll get more information about it. If I ask them to break apart that knowledge into different parts and compare and analyze it with other parts, then I'm getting into analysis, which is much deeper understanding. If I have them combine new ideas with what they're learning in their lower knowledge, like rearrange information, reorganize it, compile it, then I'm getting into even deeper understanding. And then if I have them say whether it's good or bad by contrasting, critiquing, criticizing, evaluating, then I've reached, according to Bloom's, the deepest level of thinking. So for us to write these student learning outcomes or your benchmark, we have to choose a verb from these categories, these active verbs, or I like to call them action verbs, that will then make it very clear. And so there was a previous example, I don't know if you had access to it, but it talks about how to do a scene in Hamlet, and notice that as we get deeper and deeper, it requires more and more thinking. So I could recite a scene in Hamlet versus I could critique a scene in Hamlet. When you use Bloom's taxonomy, you assure yourself that this is going to make sure it's going to ensure that you're going to be able to measure it. So if you click on this Bloom's Taxonomy handout, it's done in a slightly different way so that you might see some of the connections here. So in this way there's a circle, and right off of these circles here are the words that go with each part of understanding. Then if you go on the very outside, these are different types of instruction that will support that kind of understanding. So if I wanted to, let's go interpret some information, I could do that through a question, I could do that through a cartoon, and so on. So make sure that you use these words and that you avoid words that we can't understand, like know how to understand. We don't use those words. Okay. Hope that helped.